with me, Jenny. Today I have my May wrap up, and I actually got through quite a few books this month. I think my grand total, along with a couple mangas that I'll talk about in June's wrap up, wound up being something like 24 books. So, yeah, all in all, a pretty good reading month in May, and I'm excited to share it with you. I finally finished Queen Bee. I started this at the end of March, and I honestly didn't really touch it all that much throughout April, so I finished it up over probably about 2 weeks this month. I don't know why, but it just kind of dragged for me. Well, part of that, I believe, was because the characters I felt like were pretty flat. We didn't get to see a whole lot of any of their personalities. I didn't really feel the chemistry between the couple, and I just wasn't super interested in the revenge plot. It felt juvenile, but at the same time, I understand it really wasn't because of the fact that this is set in the Regency period and everything that came of the rumor that was started. But it just honestly, it felt petty, I guess is a better word than juvenile. However, I did feel like the writing was good, the descriptions of the places were good, the dialogue was fun, and I would definitely be willing to try a different type of book from this author. I just feel like maybe the revenge plot is what soured it for me. But if you like revenge plots, I definitely think you would like this. However, it's touted as The Count of Monte Cristo, and from my understanding of the revenge plot in that book, this is not it. It's not quite that detailed and not quite that bloodthirsty. So I finished A is for Alibi, the first Kinsey Millhone mystery by Sue Grafton, and this was okay, I guess. It definitely had the 80s feel to it, which was when it was written, in some of the comments and observations made about women and just Kinsey's attitude. She seemed to kind of dislike people for reasons that I didn't really fully understand. The whole side plot with the woman who was trying to get insurance money didn't really add anything to the book. I felt like there was a lot of filler, like whenever she would jog, that just felt like filler. The settings were described very well. There was a lot of description towards that. And overall, I just was kind of bored. Even though I didn't guess the whodunit part, all the suspects did definitely have motive, so I didn't feel like there was anything there that didn't make sense. But yeah, overall, I don't think I'll be continuing this series, and it did remind me a little bit of Stuart Wood's Stone Barrington novels, especially in the one scene where Kinsey is in the motel room and she wipes down all her prints, but then she still pays with her credit card. Like, that couldn't be found out pretty quickly and easily. And that just reminds me of one of the Stone Barrington books, in which he's worried that his office might be bugged, and bugged specifically to try to get a bead on where this person is going so that they can be killed. And he then proceeds to make arrangements for this person to go somewhere, and it isn't like a red herring to try to draw the person, the suspects, to this other place. No, he's making the legitimate plans, and he's even talking about, I need to get a bug sweep done. I'm going to do it tomorrow. Like, there's just that really big disconnect there. So yeah, I mean, if you like mysteries and you like kind of like the cheesy thrillers, then this might be more your speed than mine. Then again, it may also be boring to you. So if you do pick this up, I wish you better luck than me. So Lady Tan's Circle of Women is Lisa C.'s newest novel, and it takes place in, I believe, the early 1400s in China. And as with her other books that are set in historical China, this follows a well-to-do family and a well-to-do girl. And as usual with Lisa C.'s books, I absolutely love the female friendships and like the female family, just the way she fleshes out these relationships and how complex they can be, and especially the complexities of a large family and the kind of convoluted families that were kind of the normal back then, when you had, usually the like head husband and wife, and then any of the husband's brothers were also living there. And then, of course, because sons were so important and children were so important, there were plenty of concubines in there as well. And it's just very interesting to see how like everybody interacts, and you get to see Lady Tan grow from a girl of, I believe, 8 all the way up until she is in like her late 50s. And this is a unique one because she is a doctor and is able to leave the compound because of that. And this is the first time Lisa C. also has written about the royals. You do get to see the Empress in this, if just for a short time. And yeah, I absolutely love Lisa C., and her writing is like really, really good. And this is definitely one that I recommend. However, it is also a very, very sad one. Yeah, it's another thing that Lisa C. does, is the heartbreak that comes in life. She does not shy away from. So yeah, like I said, I really enjoyed this. This is going on my top favorites of this year, without a doubt. So I read The Apothecary Diaries at the same time I was finishing up Lady Tan's Circle of Women. It was definitely interesting to read these together, as they're both set in the inner court of China. Well, I'm going to assume that Apothecary Diaries is China. But it was definitely interesting to read them together, especially because I really was into this while I was into the part of Apothecary Diary, Lady Tan's Circle of Women, where she was actually in the Imperial Court. And the fact that both these characters are doctors, or at least, in a medical type profession, it was interesting to kind of see the contrasts of this. And I did enjoy all the mysteries that were woven into this series as well. I felt like the art was very well done. The clothing, the hairstyles, and like the settings were very intricate. And I did enjoy Mao Mao and I can't remember his name now. The Enoch who had hired her. I enjoyed their interactions and seeing her kind of like anger, not really anger, but like standoffishness towards him and the way he reacted to it. This was pretty funny. And I'm also interested to see what happens when Mao Mao learns more about him. So I'm definitely excited to get further volumes of this as they come out. And I do recommend it if you're looking for like a historical mystery manga. So the latest DC for YA that I read is Zatanna, the Jewel of Gravesend. And this was actually a pretty interesting comic. I did enjoy how it kind of blended the backstory of Zatanna and her being Zatara's daughter and all that with a original take on everything. And unfortunately, like a lot of these, I feel like where it left off, it just leaves it completely open for a sequel that really doesn't seem to be forthcoming. They just keep doing more and more characters in this YA, which is perfectly fine, but I wish they would either start bringing out sequels or making them one-shots. And especially considering we do have another Zatanna book that's in the middle grade. I feel like there was kind of a missed opportunity to turn one of these into a sequel. But honestly, this was one of the better ones, and part of the reason I may think that is that I don't know a whole lot about Zatanna. She's not one of the characters I've read a lot of backstory on, so really the only thing I know about her is her father's Zatara, and she speaks backwards to work spells, and that is really about all I know. And yeah, I feel like maybe if you knew more, you might dislike this. But if you enjoy the DC YA comics, this is definitely one of the better ones. And if you like Zatanna, I feel like this would definitely be a hit. And I also feel like it doesn't feel quite as YA as some of the other ones in that, there's these big dramatic things that are like, oh, who will she go to the prom with sort of thing. Whereas this one felt like the big reveals felt more relevant to me as an older adult, if that makes sense. I'm not trying to say that, when you're a teenager, who's going to go to the prom with you can be a big thing. But, with me being years out of high school, it's kind of like, okay, that is not all that important. So, yeah. And I'm starting to ramble now, so yeah, if you like Zatanna, try this out. So I finished listening to The Ashes and the Star-Crossed King, and I did enjoy it, but as with the first one, I feel like listening to it, I did miss out on some world building stuff, although this one I don't feel like I missed out on quite as much. And I did get a little annoyed with the repetitiveness of, there she is, there he is. I'm like, okay, I get the point. And I did like the whole enemies part, but I feel like it could have been developed a lot more. And yeah, I do feel like the complicated relationship between Arya and Victor was explored really well in this book, but I also feel like that would have complicated things with Rain a lot more than it seemed to in this book. Like, she was that close to her father, and he's the driving force behind everything that happened. And I do feel like she just kind of, oh, I forgive you. And I don't feel like he really earned that either. And yeah, I mean, it was just kind of all over the place in that respect. But the action was again written very well, and it does feel a lot like the Hunger Games, actually more like Mockingjay, and the first one definitely had Hunger Games vibes. So if you liked the Hunger Games, I think you would definitely really, really like this. Although it is definitely in adult and not young adult. So I just finished listening to Funny Story, and I absolutely loved this book. Peter, however, is an absolute butt. He can go jump off a cliff. And I honestly kind of liked how he was just so unapologetically superior acting most of the time. Like, it was kind of one note, but I feel like that just really made it easier to dislike him, and that's kind of like what you're supposed to do. So, yeah. Daphne and Miles were really, really good together, and I love the fact that, she gets along with Julia, and like the whole readathon thing at the library was super cute, and I really wish that I would have had a library do that when I was younger. I mean, I did have the summer readings and stuff, but never anything like that, and I just absolutely loved the idea of that. And then the friendship between Daphne and Ashley was just great, and Emily Henry just writes such great books and fleshes out her characters so well, and the setting is so well done. And yeah, I highly recommend this, especially if you like romantic comedies. I did feel like there were quite a few things that made me at least chuckle, and quite a few that did make me laugh. So yeah, definitely give this one a check if you're into romance. And I will say there were a few spicy scenes, but not that many, as is kind of usual for an Emily Henry book. And I feel like the build-up was really good, and I really felt the relationship. And yeah, if I don't stop here, I'm just gonna ramble for like hours about this book. So yeah, just read it. So I listened to yours truly. This is my first Abby Jimenez book. I do have a bunch other of her books on hold, all as audio. And I did enjoy this. However, that first chapter almost made me DNF it just because I felt like the nurses were all just being just juvenile, I guess, and it just kind of rubbed me the wrong way, and especially with it being, they're nurses in the emergency room. They are on shift, and this is what they're doing. Just definitely rubbed me the wrong way. Sorry, my phone is going off for Goodreads again. That seems to be a theme with these videos. However, once I got past the first chapter, it did get better. I really did enjoy Jacob and Brianna passing the letters to each other. I thought that was cute. I wish there would have been more of that in the book. And I did like the fact that Benny, at least, was relatively well fleshed out as a secondary character. I did feel like some of the other secondary characters, such as Jacob's sisters, could have been fleshed out more. But I did think that, all the side plots were done very well. Benny's dealing with his disease and Brianna dealing with it as well and trying to help him. I did feel like that was well done, and I do have to say this felt somewhat, at least, like an Emily Henry book. I don't feel like the side plots and side characters were quite as strong as in an Emily Henry book, but it was still very, very similar to that in the fact that it had all these side plots. And I'm definitely looking forward to listening to some more Abby Jimenez books and see how she has grown as a writer. I listened to Postcards from the Edge by Carrie Fisher, and it was kind of out there. It was very disjointed, in my opinion, and it was kind of all about the ennui of the rich and the famous, and just not really my speed. I did feel like it was relatively well written, but I don't know that I would really recommend it unless you like things like maybe Gossip Girl, Pretty Little Liars. I feel like it's somewhat along those lines, and it definitely does have a little bit of coming of age in there as well. But this is definitely one I would approach cautiously. I feel like after listening to Wishful Drinking, I understand Postcards from the Edge a little more. And I do appreciate the fact that Carrie is extremely honest in this, but parts of it are almost written to be shocking and sensational, but her very wry and self-deprecating sense of humor keeps it from being too much, in my opinion. And she's definitely a very interesting person, and I did enjoy getting this glimpse into her life through this book, and I am going to as well listen to her other book, The Princess Diarist, which is specifically about her time on Star Wars. I do like the fact that she narrates this book. She also narrated Postcards from the Edge, and also narrates The Princess Diarist. I always enjoy when authors narrate their own works, and especially when it's a memoir, I feel like they're then able to like hit those beats. And like in this one, you know, a lot of her sarcastic little bits, she had this really kind of like wry laugh, and she would kind of do this big sensational announcer voice, and just that kind of added to it. And I definitely recommend listening to this one rather than reading it just for that experience. So I finished The Princess Diarist. This was also narrated by Carrie Fisher herself. And so far this has been my favorite of the 3 books of hers that I've read. I liked this one better than her other memoir, just because I really honestly only know her from Star Wars, and this was more about her time on Star Wars. I also felt like it was more linear, and I did like the fact that it had some of her journal entries in like the middle of it, and she does have some really good lines in there, and I do enjoy her writing, and I'd definitely be willing to try some more of her fiction and to see if maybe it's a little more logical than Postcards from the Edge was. I will say, if you're like an absolutely positively huge fan of Star Wars and don't want the magic ruined, you may want to skip this, because there are some things that kind of, you know, make you realize that, yeah, these characters really do have, well, you know, the characters don't have the flaws, but the actors do. And yeah, and I feel like if you're that huge of a fan of the movie, then it might kind of take some of that away. For me, it honestly didn't, even though I really do like Star Wars. So, you know, take that with a grain of salt. So that's everything I read in May, and as always, if you liked this video, hit that like button and hit the subscribe button to see more bookish content from me and be notified every time I post a video. And I also have a Discord that I will have linked down below if you'd like to join and talk about bookish things. So I will see you next time in the book cave.